This week's Parsha is a treasure trove. It is a veritable cornucopia of Jewish wisdom and Jewish rules and guides for living. This one Torah portion contains more mitzvot, more individual biblical commandments than any other portion in the entire Torah. You may know, some of you may know that the whole Torah contains 613 mitzvot, 613 commandments, spread out over the 54 portions of the year. And of those 613, 74 of them are in this week's portion. It is chock full of mitzvahs. So reading this week's portion, you'll find that there are lots and lots of examples, lots of terrific material to read and mull over and digest as part of your study. Now, almost all of the commandments in the Parsha are ethical commandments rather than ritual commandments, which means that they govern proper moral behavior. And they more or less fall into one of a few large categories. One is family law, rules about specifically about marital dissolution and divorce, the ways to handle inheritance and parenthood when a marriage ends. Second is laws pertaining to the criminal justice system, which includes the rules about the presumption of innocence and a ban on excessively cruel punishment when someone is convicted of a crime. The third category is business ethics and commercial damages, the right way to treat someone when they are buying something from you or selling something to you. And the last one is the category that includes the ethical handling of natural resources, the proper Jewish way to treat animals, and also even plants and the agricultural products that they generate for our use. So the Parsha overall is a great read, and if you make your way through all of it, what I think you'll find is that the whole portion and that long string of mitzvot, one after the other, seems to have been engineered with the purpose of ethical expansion. It wants us to broaden our hearts, to widen our view of who and what deserves ethical consideration. And the Torah repeatedly makes mention of the fact that we need to exercise compassion, ethical tenderness, toward certain others that we might otherwise be tempted to treat like objects instead of human beings. Convicted criminals, prisoners of war, manual laborers who struggle to get by on subsistence-level wages, even the animals that plow our fields and grind our grain. It's interesting, and especially it's very forward-thinking for the Torah to have included animals in the category of those that have a right to humane treatment. This obviously wasn't always the case in human history. The concept of animal rights is a relatively recent modern invention. Even leaving aside the luxurious treatment that we give our pets in 20th century America, where you can treat your animals to custom-tailored designer clothing, and aromatherapy treatments, doggy acupressure at the pet massage studio. Even leaving all of that aside, the idea that human beings have moral obligations toward animals, that their suffering matters, and that for that reason we ought to restrain or redirect our power over them, that is an ethical innovation that the world never imagined before these codes of ancient Israelite law. So in Hebrew, we call this category of Jewish law tzaar ba'alei chayim, which means something like a concern for all living beings. As I mentioned earlier, there's a whole raft of mitzvot in this category that appear in this week's Parsha. If a neighbor's ox or donkey falls down while it's working, we're commanded to go in and help him lift it back up. If you're using an ox to plow your field, anybody use an ox to plow their fields? If you're using an ox to plow your field, you are forbidden to muzzle the animal, to put a muzzle on its snout, to keep it from munching on a few mouthfuls of grain as it walks. You can't yoke two animals together to pull a plow if they have very different levels of power or endurance. You can't capture a bird to eat it the same time that you take away the eggs from its nest. Now, don't misunderstand, we are allowed to use animals for our benefit. Jewish law permits us to eat meat. We're allowed to slaughter animals. We can use their fur or their skin or their feathers for clothing or decoration. We can employ animal labor in our fields or farms or in warfare without ambiguity and without apology. However, we are not permitted to allow that legal accommodation to make us feel callous toward animal suffering. That's the nuance of the rules of tzaar ba'alei chayim. We're allowed to use any kind of kosher animal for our nourishment or our well-being, and in every case, human rights override animal rights, but we are forbidden to overlook or ignore the fact that animals can suffer. When my family was on vacation this summer, we stopped one day to get a bite at a little snack bar. And while we were waiting in line, the family right behind us, a mom and a dad, and their son, who was probably 7 or 8 years old, they were trying to decide what to get to eat. So I hear the dad say to the kid, "Okay, mom and dad are going to get hamburgers, and we'll get you a chicken sandwich." "But I don't want a chicken sandwich," the kid says. "I feel bad for the chicken." "I know." And the dad says, just like this, "You feel bad for the chicken? You feel bad for the chicken?" And the kid says, "Yeah, I feel bad for the chicken. I don't want to eat him." And the dad says this, "Let me tell you something. You think your chicken sandwich is going to make a difference? It's not. Whether or not you get a chicken sandwich doesn't matter one bit. It's not going to change anything in the world at all. I'm getting you the chicken sandwich." So, first of all, great parenting, right? But on one level, the dad is right. Do you know how many chickens we eat in this country every year? 8 billion chickens Americans eat every year. That is a mind-bogglingly enormous flock of chickens. 8 billion chickens. So, yes, in a pile of 8 billion chickens, try not to imagine what that would look like, in a pile of 8 billion chickens, one kid's meal-sized fried chicken sandwich makes no difference at all. None, zero. But that is the space in which the Torah wants to do its work. That little feeling of discomfort that that kid felt, that's what the Torah wants us to notice and nurture. That very slight sense of unease that we ought to more deeply examine and consider the ethical ramifications of the everyday things that we would otherwise do unconsciously. In that space is the generator of conscientious living. I was so disappointed in that father that he just squashed it completely. Now, let me also be very clear about the fact that I love a chicken sandwich. I am a proud and enthusiastic carnivore. I think that meat is tasty and delicious, and I firmly believe that if God didn't want us to eat animals, he wouldn't have made them out of meat. But I also know that while I'm free to have a carnivorous dietary preference as a Jew, I'm not free to exercise that right in a cavalier or unexamined way. No matter what we choose to consume or how, our consumption must be stripped of the misperception that a living being can be treated like an unfeeling object. I do love eating meat, but our ethical tradition insists that we not lose sight of the fact that even when it is permitted to us, our pleasure sometimes comes at the price of someone else's suffering, somewhere down the line. Now, what I wish I had said to that guy behind me in the snack bar line was, "Excuse me, you're wrong. Your kid's chicken sandwich does make a difference. The difference it makes may not matter when you stack it up against that pile of 8 billion chickens, but it does matter inside his ethical self. It matters inside all of our ethical selves. And the obvious conclusion that follows on after one's decision to more closely interrogate what we consume and how is that once we've tuned ourselves properly in the work of tzaar chayim, the concern for other living beings, once we've done that, once we've adjusted our own capacity for tenderness and compassion toward animals, we have strengthened the musculature that makes us more capable of exercising tenderness and compassion for other people. Even, as the Torah takes great pains to say, even the people you might not ordinarily care all that much about otherwise. The teachings of Kabbalah, of the Jewish mystical tradition, instruct us that every single one of our daily actions adds a tiny packet of spiritual energy into the world, a very small spark of ethical purpose that meaningfully affects the cosmos, even if we can't detect it ourselves. Everything we do that touches the universe's moral fabric changes it in imperceptible but consequential ways. I think that is why I still can't stop thinking about that kid in the lunch line. Not because I think he could have saved a chicken, or that his choice of sandwich would have altered the machinery of American food production. But what I can't stop thinking about is that very brief moment of time was the time when that kid's conscience came to life. In that moment, he noticed something that passes by undetected by most of us most of the time, that there are other living creatures on the other side of all our appetites. The Torah cautions us not to push that feeling down, not to hurry past it in a rush not to notice, but instead to protect that tender part of ourselves and let it guide who we will become. It is especially useful guidance as we approach the days of awe, as we get ready for the arrival of a new year. In the new year, as in every year, our work will be made more morally significant if we can train ourselves to notice suffering that would otherwise be easy to ignore, to notice the dignity of those we might otherwise overlook, to notice the long-lasting moral freight carried by even our smallest everyday choices. The mitzvah of tzaar chayim teaches us that compassion isn't just something we feel, it is something we do. It's something we practice until the heart becomes more spacious, more attentive, more alive. And perhaps that is one of the great purposes of these many mitzvot in Parshat Kiteitzei that tumble and cascade over us as we prepare for the holy days, the most spiritually significant week and a half of the whole year, to heighten our ethical awareness, to sharpen the sensitivity of our conscience, and to make extra certain that whatever else we become in this new year that's just around the corner, we should never become people who stop feeling bad for the chicken. Shabbat shalom, everybody.